It's time for my annual trip to the gym.
You only go once a year?
Yep. Arrive, have no clue what to do, try some random exercises, leave. That's it.
You should try Fitbod. It's an app that builds a workout routine just for you, based on your goals, fitness level, and equipment. And a whole year of Fitbod costs less than one session with a trainer.
Wow, this has already been my most productive gym trip yet.
Download Fitbod today and get a 14-day free trial, plus 25% off your subscription when you go to fitbod.me/getfit.
This week on RVER, sponsored by Progressive Insurance. I'm sorry, I can't operate on that vehicle.
But doctor, you took an oath.
That RV, it's my son's RV.
Oh, doctor, isn't there anything you can
I'm
do?
not a miracle worker, Sheila. I'm an RV surgeon, trained to save the lives of large injured recreational vehicles, which is definitely a real profession.
When your RV really needs saving, Progressive has you covered. See if you could save with a leader in RV insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, covered subject to policy terms.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of Real Life Ghost Stories.
I am not counting this week.
Well done, I'm proud of you. That takes great restraint. We are going to start off by thanking our new Patreon pledgers. So we would like to say thank you to Jacob Haley,
To Amy Parfait.
to Shorty,
What a name.
I know, right?
To Hayley Corway.
to Andrea Romin,
To Lois Kelly.
Amanda Ruth Lee Smith,
C. Scott.
Rebecca Sue McLaughlin.
Millie Bryant Pearson.
Thank you so much for your Patreon pledges this week. We appreciate it so much, and we're over halfway to our Patreon goal.
Amazing.
Which is mental.
Really
That's
good.
so mad.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much. I still can't believe that people are willing to give their hard-earned cash to us. That's crazy. It just blows my mind. So thank you. We really appreciate it, and we love you for it forever.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
Our film review this week is The Boy. And The Boy was released in 2016. It has 6 out of 10 on IMDb and 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't understand these huge disparities between
quite weird,
IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. Last couple of weeks we've had that. Don't get it. Do you want a synopsis?
Yeah, go for it.
The Boy is a frightening thrill ride directed by William Brent Bell, who also directed The Devil Inside, interestingly, starring Lauren Cohen from The Walking Dead. Greta is a young American woman who takes a job as a nanny in a remote English village, only to discover that the family's 8-year-old is actually a life-size doll that the parents care for just like a real boy, as a way to cope with the death of their actual son 20 years prior. After violating a list of strict rules, a series of disturbing and inexplicable events bring Greta's worst nightmare to life, leading her to believe that the doll is actually alive. I'm going to start this one off by apologising to you for making you watch this.
Thanks. I think that's probably right, because it was awful.
Awful because there was a doll or an awful film?
No, the film wasn't awful, but it was awful because I had to stay. That doll was so freaky. They're all horrible. They're all horrible. Dolls are horrible.
See, I'm not really that bothered by dolls, so I thought this film was actually quite boring.
Oh, did you? I didn't.
I did. I think it was... I actually don't think Lauren Cohen is a very good actress, which is surprising because I love The Walking Dead. She's Maggie from The Walking Dead, by the way, if you're a Walking Dead fan. And I didn't think she was a very good actress in it.
Why?
I just found her very lifeless.
Oh, I thought she was alright.
Maybe she was trying to be reflective of the doll. Maybe it was deeper. And we just didn't get it.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I thought she was alright. I thought she did an okay job, actually.
But I also think, right, if you are going to be a nanny, you go to this big manor house in the middle of nowhere and the people are like, oh, come and meet our son, and it's actually a little doll. I would be like, tell you what, I actually don't need the money. I don't need the job. See you later. And I'm not frightened of dolls, but I would be like, these people are absolutely mental. Yeah. And I think that I would walk away. I wouldn't be like, ha ha ha, oh no, you're not joking. Okay, I'm just gonna go along with this.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to stand there and pretend like I was going to go along.
I don't think I'd even be able to have that conversation. I'd look at the doll and then just run at her screaming, I think.
See, I don't think you would. I think you think yourself to be weaker than you actually are.
You say that, but all those dolls you showed me today, how long did I stick around and look at them?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Went to a boot fair today and there were a lot of porcelain dolls. A man offered me like a box of porcelain dolls for $5 and I really wanted to bring them home, but I wasn't allowed.
No.
So
Yeah, there would be consequences to that.
I thought this film was really clumsy. I thought it had a really good idea behind it. I thought the story could have been brilliant, but they just didn't quite pull it off.
I disagree with you.
Okay, tell me why.
I didn't think it was clumsy, actually. I thought it flowed quite well. I like the way that you didn't actually see the doll move at any point itself, which was good.
No, you never see it move.
Which was good, I thought, because often you lose a little bit of it with the animation of it when it turns itself.
Yeah, or if it, like when we watched that film Sabrina where the doll's eyes moved. In this film...
That was scary, though.
No, that film was so awful. In this film, Brahms, that is the doll, you never actually see him move, which I think is a stroke of genius.
Yeah, no, that's very clever.
Because it adds a lot to it.
It does, it really does.
It has a big M. Night Shyamalan twist at the end of it.
Shyamalan.
But I'm not going to give it away, because I do actually recommend that you watch this.
I think it was good. I don't understand why you call your kids Brahms. Apologies if that is your child's name. I also think we need to talk about the ability of the Teflon towel, as I like to call it.
Jesus Christ. So there's one point in the film where, if you looked at my Instagram story this week, I did the rule number 1 of horror stories or horror films is don't go into the attic. Don't go into the fucking attic. It's never a good idea. Just don't go into the attic or the basement. That's like, they are strong rules to live
absolutely,
by.
Always.
She gets out of the shower, something happens, she is wrapped in a towel, she goes out of the shower, she goes up into the attic, she climbs up into the attic in this towel, she's like thrown to the floor in the attic, all this stuff is going on, she's running around, she's frantically trying to get out of the attic, she's locked into it, blah blah blah, she collapses, she's found the next day, she climbs out of the attic, the entire time her towel stays on.
That is skill. That's pure skill. She's got a Teflon towel. It's made of Teflon.
I don't understand
that
how
doesn't
that
even make sense, because that doesn't stick.
That's the point of Teflon, isn't it? It doesn't stick.
So then it would fall down.
Like, I don't know how that happened. That's the freakiest thing about this whole film.
Maybe she duct tapes the towel.
Maybe she has some sort of way of tying it. You know the way girls like do that twisty turban thing when they get out of the shower? That seems to be a mystery to a lot of people, and I don't really know why. I think it's an innate ability that girls are born with.
Yeah, possibly.
Born with the ability to do a towel turban. But that was the freakiest thing for me about this whole film.
No, the doll was the freakiest thing, without a doubt. It was really creepy.
I think that the way the actual doll that they used was very clever.
Yeah.
I liked the doll. I thought the doll, because like Annabelle, I think, is ridiculous looking. Like the Chucky dolls, all of that, I don't really see what's so frightening about them. But this one was so unassuming and lifelike.
Yeah.
That was just very strange.
Didn't like it at all.
I'd give it a 3 out of 5. I know
You
everyone's
just
going
said
to
you
laugh.
hated it.
I know everyone's going to laugh.
And you literally just said it was slow and...
I said it was clumsy, but I said it was a really good idea that just could have been executed better. I think it's worth a watch.
Okay.
If for the M. Night Shyamalan twist at the end.
So 3 out of 5 is really your 1 out of 5, isn't it?
No, 1 out of 5 is open house.
No, that's
I gave it an open house. I gave it an open house. I gave it a 1 out of 5.
I would give this 3.5, just because I feel like if you didn't like it that much and you gave it a 3, I can't really give it a 3 either, as well, because my 3 would be different. I feel like it was a good enough watch. Like I didn't find it boring. I found it quite entertaining.
No, maybe it's just because I
wasn't a fan of the twist, actually.
Maybe it's because I'm not really frightened of dolls. I didn't really... I didn't find... Not that the story was believable, that's not what I mean, but I sort of found everybody's reactions to everything, again, really unbelievable. I was like, just leave the house. Just leave the house. Don't take the job with these two people who think this doll is their child.
Yeah. I didn't like the twist. The twist ruined it for me, actually, because then it became a different type of movie.
Yeah.
But I quite enjoyed it. So maybe I'll give it 4, actually. I'll give it 4.
Oh, go on, you mad thing, giving it 4.
Yeah.
So if you watch this film, let us know what you think of it. Let us know if you enjoyed the twist at the end or didn't enjoy the twist at the end. Now, that brings me to this week's story. We're sticking
with one of the best savings rates in America. Banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Slash to be in your band.
Next up for lead guitar. You're in.
Cool. Yep, even easier than that. And with no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
on the theme of freaky kids. Woo!
Great, one of my favourite scary things.
I always said that we would not do an episode on this. And then Donna McTaggart, hey Donna, if you're listening.
Hi Donna, thanks.
In the Facebook group, linked in a really famous story about black-eyed kids.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, Black Eyed Kids. It's such a creepypasta. Blah, blah. I'm not interested in it. And then I said, you know what? Other people were really interested on the Facebook group in Black Eyed Kids. So I was like, right, we'll do an episode and I'll just debunk the whole thing. This research absolutely slayed me this week. I'm talking Dear David levels of being frightened. I don't know.
And you debunked that as well.
And I don't know why this frightened me so much. I don't God. Anyway, so the original story that went kind of viral, as it were, was from a guy called Brian Bethel, and he wrote this story onto a forum in like the mid-90s, and it's the pivotal Black Eyed Kids story where he's in his car outside the movie theatre in America. Obviously these kids come to the car, they're trying to get in, they're asking for permission to get into his car, blah 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 blah, and that kind of went viral as it could in the 90s. And it's kind of become the pivotal story of the Black Eyed Kids. So when I started my research this week, I started by listening to a Coast to Coast interview with a guy called David Weatherly. Now, obviously, we know Coast to Coast is what it is, and you're just going to have to...
I love it.
I love it as well. I think it's gas, but it's, it's obviously dubious at best. However, this guy, David Weatherly, did an interview on Coast to Coast. It's on YouTube. I would suggest that you look it up and listen to it. And he claims that there's been sightings of Black Eyed Kids for years, but they weren't formally called Black Eyed Kids until the 90s and early 2000s, which is why everybody thinks it's kind of a modern legend. And why I thought it was just a creepypasta that had grown legs and become this legend. And when I was researching, there are so many stories online about people's first-hand experiences of Black Eyed Kids that it absolutely gave me the heebie-jeebies. And I will talk about why it gave me the heebie-jeebies at the very end of the episode. Are you ready for your first story?
Never ready.
So this first story comes from a guy called Brent Swanser, and he wrote this story in 2017. And you have to remember, there are kind of rules that Black Eyed Kids seem to follow. So generally, they will knock on your door or your car window or whatever it is, and they will ask to come inside to use the phone, or say that they need help and they need to come inside. It would appear that they can't come inside unless they are given permission to come inside. This becomes more and more persistent, and then eventually the victim, as it were, will notice that they have completely black eyes, and they're always accompanied with a feeling of severe anxiety or dread. Are you ready?
No.
This happened to me when I just turned 18 years old, just before I was to head off to college, and I had decided to take a road trip from my hometown in California to Denver, Colorado to visit a friend of mine there. I did not have much money, and my parents thought it was a bit of a whimsical idea, but they let me go through with it anyway. I thought at the time that I could handle myself, and at 6'3" and pretty muscular, I suppose I have a somewhat intimidating enough presence that I foolishly thought I would not run into too many problems along the way, that no one would mess with me. Anyway, it was just to be a drive out there, after which I would stay 2 days and then come back. Simple. There was no real reason to think it was a particularly bad idea at the time. Along the way, somewhere in the wilds of Nevada, it became obvious that the drive was to be a lot longer than I had expected. I had left my home too late and I was getting tired and sleepy. If you've ever taken this drive, then you might know that there are vast swathes where there's not a soul in sight for miles around. It might as well be the surface of the moon. There was really not much to see along this route. It was dark and empty, and with the endless monotonous road ahead and the hypnotising lane lines flickering by, I caught myself nodding off at the wheel on several occasions. I did not really have the money for a hotel to stay at. I barely had enough money for food and gas, so I decided to pull over at a highway rest area off the highway and take a nap in my car. I only planned to sleep for a couple of hours and then head off along that dark, desolate highway once more. The area was actually rather remote, with nothing around, and at the time there were no other vehicles at that rest stop, giving it all a rather bleak and imposing atmosphere that made me wonder if it was a good idea to be there or not. But I ended up parking, putting my chair back and falling asleep, even as I turned over the idea of just continuing on my way in my head. I awoke to a tapping on my car window. I jumped awake, and it was light enough that I at first thought it was early morning. I was somewhat startled to see a young man standing there peering in at me. He was a skinny young man who looked to be perhaps in his early 20s or late teens, not much older than myself at the time, and he was dressed normally, certainly not a vagrant or appearing particularly threatening in any noticeable way, although I immediately wondered why he was out there in the middle of nowhere and what he wanted. He then simply and calmly said, "Open the door." At this, I immediately had a distinct sense of palpable menace, some undefinable feeling of threat, and was glad that I had locked the doors of my vehicle. I simply said no. He demanded again, "Open the door." This time in almost a growl, and I soon noticed that there were two others with him lurking in the background, and that there was a pickup truck nearby, which I assumed to be theirs. Upon this truck was mounted a spotlight that was turned on and pointed at the ground, which was why the whole area seemed to be surprisingly illuminated. In actuality, it was still the middle of the night. This is where things get bizarre indeed. Thinking that it was just some kid screwing around, I took out a knife I had brought with me and just held it where he could see it, which I guess was pretty stupid in retrospect, but remember, I was just a dumb teenager, and I thought this would maybe scare them away. In fact, it had quite the opposite effect. The young man became absolutely infuriated and let out what I can only describe as an animalistic howl or wail, quite chillingly inhuman in its intensity, and he violently shoved my car to send the vehicle quaking, and I actually felt it lift from the ground a bit. It was breathtakingly horrifying, totally out of nowhere, and was a jarring, frightening display of strength I would never have expected from a person, let alone someone with such a slim frame. It is hard to describe the amount of alarm that I felt at that moment. This is when I noticed that the two other people with him in the background had something quite off about them. I could see that their eyes were either glowing or reflecting light like those of a cat. I don't know which, but either way you might recognise as something that human eyes do not do. It also seemed that they were, I don't know how to describe it, blurry, fuzzy. Do you know when you're watching a TV programme with bad transmission and the people on the screen look jumpy and distorted? Can you imagine that? Well, that's what it was like. They seemed distorted, broken and vague, as if infused with some sort of static. It was almost as if they were tenuous, having trouble with staying in focus, staying in reality, having difficulty existing, or that they were quivering or moving to and fro at great speed. It was really very strange, and although I suppose I am a decent writer, I find it quite hard to fully describe it in words. The next thing I knew, one of them, a girl around the same age as the man, who was now panting and scowling like a rabid dog, his visage twisted and contorted beyond the thin pane of the window separating us, was suddenly just there beside him. One moment she was standing in the background some distance away, and then she was just right there in the blink of an eye. It was abrupt and made me feel disorientated, to say the least. Then she also said, "Open the door now." This is when I snapped out of my shock and started my car. I honestly didn't think that it would start, thinking that surely they must have done something to cripple it, and that I would be stuck there in this metal prison until they smashed their way in or someone came along to help, which was a slim possibility considering the sheer emptiness of the road and the fact that the chance that few vehicles passed by in the night or would even know something was wrong was a remote possibility at best. To my genuine surprise, the car did start, and I tore out of there as fast as I could. As I did so, the spotlight on the pickup truck immediately sprung to life and swung up to home in on me, blinding in its brightness and following my car with perfect precision. I stepped on the gas, and as I did, I was shocked to see that one of them, not the original man or woman, probably the other one, or even another hiding in the shadows who I had not seen, was running alongside my car. I think it is important to mention at this point that I was almost to the actual highway and steadily picking up speed, perhaps going 40 miles an hour at the moment, yet there this person was, another young man, easily pacing me as the spotlight pierced forward to track me. As he ran, barely even looking tired, he reached out to knock on my window, and it was all so totally strange and frightening that I remember I let out a scream, something that I usually do not do and which I can probably count on one hand how many times I've done it. As I reached the highway and picked up speed, he tried to keep up with me, banging on the window the whole time with increasing force, and probably made it up to around 50 miles an hour before he finally fell behind and faded into the distance. It was all absolutely mind-boggling. I just drove off as fast as I could, my foot heavy on the pedal, and although that persistent spotlight stayed on me until I was out of sight, the truck oddly did not give chase. I hauled ass until I reached an off-ramp into a populated place, and I must have sat there at a diner for about 3 hours, shaking and trembling at the whim of the adrenaline that was coursing through me. I could not keep my hands still. I must have looked a mess, and I remember the waitress asking if I was alright on numerous occasions, but I lied and said that I was just frightened because I'd almost crashed out on the road. I don't know why I didn't tell anybody or call the police. It was probably because I didn't think they would believe me. Hell, I barely believed it. And also the fact that I was eager to reach my destination and did not want to deal with the hassle, especially since I was in one piece despite my rattled state. I never did tell my friend in Colorado about it. And indeed, I've never told anyone about it until now. I was terrified to tell anyone about what really happened. Look, this may all sound very dramatic, but I assure you it did happen. I'm not exaggerating, and to this day it is so traumatic to even think about it. I truly feel that I was not meant to make it out of there alive, and that I should have died, or even worse, at that rest area. My life was surely in some form of danger. And I often find myself wondering how many other travellers along that desolate stretch of highway were confronted by these odd strangers, and what would have happened to me if I'd opened my door as they demanded. To this day it gives me duress just to bring up these memories. Adding to this is that I've never been able to figure out just exactly what happened there on that highway, or just who it was that I encountered. It is so bizarre and inexplicable, and doesn't even clearly fit any strange phenomena I know of. Who were these people? Were they even people at all? If not, what were they? Were they wraiths of some kind, black-eyed kids, shadow people, vampires, for God's sake? What? I mean, what in the world was going on there? Who were they? I have no answers for it, and the whole incident leaves me baffled to this day. Now I like to think of myself as a reasonably intelligent and rational person. I wasn't drinking at the time, and I wasn't doing drugs. I would really like there to be a pat, mundane explanation for it all, but I can't find it. I can't even really find any known phenomena out there in the world of the weird that really fits in with what I saw. It's all completely and utterly bizarre and confounding to me. Story number 1. What are your thoughts?
It sounds very vampire-y to me. Got a bit of a Lost Boys element to it, like roaming gangs and...
Roaming gangs in a big pickup truck.
Yeah.
It does sound a bit Lost Boys.
I also hate the idea of someone being able to keep up with a 50-mile-an-hour car.
That literally makes my skin crawl. If this story is true, I think this story is far more traumatising than seeing a ghost or having a poltergeist in your house or whatever. Well, because there's a sense of realness to it.
Yeah.
If you open your eyes and there's a real person standing there, you're going to be like, oh, are you okay? Do you want something?
And you don't tend to just point your car at them either, do you? Because you're like, well, if they're just crazy homeless guys, I've committed murder, haven't I?
And these are real people who have real reasonable requests, and then suddenly they do something that is just that little bit abnormal, like that howl, or like, I mean, apparating is not a little bit abnormal, that's pretty fucking abnormal, but it's just, I find the whole thing just so uneasy. And so this guy, he wrote this story back in 2017, and then he wrote a follow-up only recently where he this is still Brent Swanser, where he said, so many people have contacted me after I wrote that story, and all they cared about was, so in his original article he had written 3 or 4 paranormal encounters that he had in his life, and all people cared about were the black-eyed kids, as we're going to call it now, black-eyed kids encounter, because they were like, oh, I've been in the same situation. And other people were saying people talk about black-eyed children as not actually being violent or aggressive or just persistent and making people feel uneasy. But actually, he ended up getting loads of stories about people who physically fought back against black-eyed children for whatever reason. And I've got a couple of stories for you.
Great.
More stories about black-eyed children.
So excited.
Are you ready?
No.
Let's go. A few very bizarre cases of people actually managing to fight back against these terrifying supernatural entities were relayed to me personally in the wake of an article I wrote a while back about a very strange encounter I had in my younger years with some mysterious strangers in the wilds of Nevada. After that article, I got all kinds of mails about what they could have been, from skinwalkers to aliens to escaped government experiments to vampires to just your run-of-the-mill drug-crazed psychos. But one curious idea was that they were black-eyed kids. And a few accounts, I was told, seemed to suggest that, at least for them, this was perhaps the case. I also received some very curious accounts from those who had experienced something rather similar in nature to what I went through. One reader who contacted me with his own tale and given permission to share it on the condition of his anonymity claims that he had, similar to myself, been approached by a pair of strangers as he sat in his car along a lonely, remote road in the US state of Utah. In this case, he claims that he too had stopped to take a short rest when 2 kids, In my case, it was 3, possibly more, seemingly in their mid-teens, a boy and a girl, materialised out of the night as they approached his vehicle. At first, he was worried that they were lost, as it was out in the middle of nowhere and there was no one else around for miles. He rolled down his window to get a better look at them, thinking he would call out to ask if they needed help. However, things became a bit unsettling as they approached his vehicle. He claimed that the kids seemed to be wearing very old-fashioned clothing, although he was uncertain from what era it might have been from. They were both remarkably pale, to the point that they almost seemed to emanate a faint glow from their skin in the moonlight, and both had odd-looking bald-style haircuts that for some reason put the witness ill at ease. Slightly unnerved, he nevertheless called out to the two and asked if something had happened to them and if they were in need of assistance. The boy merely replied, "Yes, please," as the two closed the distance, and that was when it was noticed that both of them had pure black eyes like those of a shark. This realisation also happened to coincide with a sudden tingling feeling of dread that sort of spread out through his body like ripples in a pond. Then one of them spoke. The boy allegedly told him that they were out lost in the desert and that they needed help. He asked the witness to open the car door and give them a ride to the nearest town, but at this point the witness claims that he was so overwhelmed with a sheer wall of fear and the potent urge to get away from there as fast as he could. Yet he also found that he seemed to be unable to move, as if he were paralysed. He would say of this, "It was a really strange sensation. Every fibre of my being was screaming to get the hell out of there, but I don't know how to describe it, sort of transfixed, hypnotised, whatever. Anyway, there wasn't a chance I was going to open the door, but I couldn't move to get my car started either. I was like a prisoner in my own skull looking out, and that window was still rolled down. Nothing separated me from that freaky kid's face leering just outside." The witness says that through sheer will he was able to move his arm slowly towards the window, but that it was as if a massively heavy weight were attached to it. He supposedly had to lean a bit with his body as he inched his limb closer to the car door, and that the whole time the two kids just stared at him quizzically, as if they were somewhat amused by it all. As the witness leaned and tried to work his arm, he said something very strange happened indeed. He went on to claim, "The whole time neither of the kids had made any move to come closer to the window, or to force or reach their way in. Like there was some sort of invisible wall there where my window would have been. Then I sort of rocking back and forth and leaning, trying to get my goddamn arm to move, and some part of my clothing must have passed that unseen barrier, because that was when the boy, quick as a whip, snagged my jacket with his hand and at the same time smiled. I tell you, I will never forget that smile. His teeth looked like they were made out of metal, gleaming, and that was what I think snapped me out of it, those teeth. The weight that had been holding me down was lifted and I shoved that boy as hard as I could. The boy apparently was surprised by this sudden push, letting go and stumbling back with a look of shock on his face. In the meantime, my contact started up his car, not sure whether he would soon be paralysed again. When he looked up, he claims the same boy and girl had somehow appeared in front of the vehicle and stood there as if trying to keep him from leaving. The girl was apparently off to the side a bit, but staring intently with a look of anger on her face. In panic, he said the witness floored it anyway, but the boy did not budge. He would explain that, "I tore off, but that kid stood his ground and thumped off my bumper. I wasn't going very fast at that point, but enough to mess somebody up, you'd think. When I looked in my rear view, I swear that kid was getting up and dusting himself off like it was no big thing. I just got the hell out of there and didn't look back again. I'll never forget the whole thing. It was like a nightmare. I still wonder what would have happened to me if I'd actually given them a ride like they wanted." It is a very outlandish case, to be sure, and I'll be the first one to admit that since this is an account given to me by some random reader, the needle of my bullshit meter is quite high on this one. But it's still a remarkably bizarre report that I felt was worth sharing. Unbelievably, there was more than one report along these lines given to me by other readers, and this one is just as weird, and perhaps even more dramatic still. The account once again mirrored my own experience in that the witness was in his car when it happened, and he was also in Nevada, in what he claims was the same general region, and his report really takes things to the next level. The witness interestingly said that he had also been in Nevada at a rest stop. He was approached by 3 young people, perhaps 18 years of age, and wearing dusty, somewhat worn-out looking clothes. Like the previous report, he says that they had black eyes and that they had asked for a ride. In my own experience, I mentioned flashing a knife in an unsuccessful attempt to scare the kids away, and this witness says that he also produced the knife in case he had to defend himself. The difference is, it seems that he actually had to end up using it. The guy told me that he had made the mistake of opening up his car door a crack, as he had been about to step out and chase them off, and that at this moment one of the kids had torn the door open and actually dragged him out of the car. He did have his knife in his hand still, and he claimed that he lashed out with it in a panic and managed to connect with it. He told me, "They pulled me out of the car and I tumbled to the ground. I figure I'm screwed at this point, but through the veil of fear I realise that my hand is still holding something, and it's my knife. I wasn't really thinking when I stabbed out with it, at the nearest shape, and I got him. I felt that knife sink in, but when I look up he's just looking at me with those black eyes. I hit him with the knife again, but no reaction. He's just standing there staring. The others are looking on as if it's no big deal. Then the kid I know I stabbed twice says, 'Maybe next time,' and they just walk off into the night. I checked the ground and the knife, but there was no blood, no nothing. I don't know if I passed some kind of test or not, and maybe that's why they left me alone, but I do know that those people you met out there, I have no doubt in my mind they wanted you dead." This particular contact even went as far as to tell me that he was very confident that the kids he met were likely even the exact same ones that I'd come across in my own weird encounter. Although I never did see the actual colour of their eyes, just that they seemed to glow or reflect light. Among all of the weird responses I got to the sharing of my experience, this one has to rank up there with the weirdest. I have no idea what to make of these accounts, how true they could be, or what connection they have to my own encounter, if any. This guy's probably just messing around. But damn if it's not an interesting twist on what happened to me and my odd addition to the Black Eyed Kids report in general. There are scattered other accounts floating about out there of others who claim to have managed to successfully fight back against the Black Eyed Kids as well. One was posted on a thread on the site of Thought Catalogue by a commenter called Bloody Bones. He claimed that one year at around Halloween he had decided to go down to the corner store, and as he did so he happened to see two teens of around 14 years of age knocking on someone's door to ask to use their phone. This struck him as odd, as it is an era where most kids would have a smartphone, and asking someone to use their phone seemed a bit unusual to him. He passed by the house, and at that point the kids turned and stared at him as he went by with an unsettling gaze. The witness hurried to the store, and when he looked back he said that they were following him. He rushed to the store. The cashier seemed concerned, and the witness told him what just happened. The cashier then explained that he had had some incidents like this in the past, and he advised the witness never to agree to help these mysterious people. At that point they noticed that the two teens were lurking right outside the door to the shop, but were not trying to enter, just loitering about and asking to be let in, even though the shop was open and there seemed to be nothing stopping them. The cashier just locked the door to make sure, and the witness would say of the odd events that unfolded. The teens never seemed to waver or leave. They wouldn't step away from the door. It had been an hour. The cashier and I were ready to fight our way out, but instead he took me out the back. The one teen came around the back just as the door shut behind us. "Can you help me?" is all he could say. He was closing in on us, and his eyes, they were as black as a starless night. They were peering right into my soul, and I couldn't help but gaze into his eyes. The terror, I just can't remember too much of what happened next, but I do recall the sounds of struggle. When I came to, the cashier was struggling with both teens. He was calling out to me for help. I ran towards them, grabbed him by his collar and pulled him between the two, knocking them over in the process. I didn't look back until I was near my house. The cashier was gone, but the teens were still following behind. I ran into my house, closed all the blinds and turned the music up. Adding to the creepiness of it all, the witness went back to the store the following day to thank him for saving his life, but he had not shown up for work. And the owner of the store said that he had quit and was in the process of moving out of town. From then on, the witness claims to have been plagued by the sense of being watched, and says that he even can see the kids on the periphery of his vision sometimes, or watching his house from across the street. It is certainly an eerie account to be sure, but is it just a spooky story, or is there anything to it? I've got one more to go, but I'm going to pause and let you give your 2 cents on this one.
So, Nevada. They're all in Nevada, right? Interesting.
I wanted to talk to you about the fact that a lot of them seem to happen in Nevada. Isn't Nevada like alien hotspot?
Area 51's in Nevada, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is it in New Mexico?
Oh, Roswell's in New Mexico.
Roswell's in New Mexico, but I think Area 51's in Nevada.
Potentially. American listeners, correct us if we're wrong. But yeah, a lot of them do seem to happen in Nevada.
Interesting.
What are your thoughts so far? Do you think this is real? Do you think it's an urban legend? Do you think it's a creepypasta gone viral? What are your thoughts so far?
I'm surprised that you ask me this every week. You know.
Yeah, I don't know why I bother. I don't know anymore.
I really do think this is real, and I think the fact what you guys aren't going to understand is that you haven't seen Emma researching before. So normally she researches to debunk something, and the fact that she's not been able to find the root of this has actually really bugged her quite a bit.
Yeah, so all week I've been looking for the root of the story. So if you are a Patreon subscriber, you'll know that we did an episode on the rake, the phenomenon of the rake, and I found the root of the story, and I was able essentially to debunk the story until somebody then sent me a story about their own encounter with the rake after that episode. So, you know, but a lot of these modern legends have their root in like creepypasta or 4chan or Reddit or whatever. They originate from somewhere, but I can't find the origins of Black-Eyed Kids. And what I can find is like news reports where people talk about them on fucking real news reports, like countless stories on the internet. The story from Brian Bethel comes up all of the time, but he didn't make any money from that story.
As
he
one
put
of
it in
many
a forum.
as well, right? He was saying you said earlier that there was other scary accounts that he'd put in there, a lot of other things that had freaked him out in his life. It wasn't just that.
Oh no, this is the one I'm reading now, but the original one of him outside the video store, or the movie theatre rather, that everyone talks about, he didn't, like, nothing was achieved. There's been no films about Black-Eyed Kids. There's one called Let Me In that has 1 star, which no one's ever going to watch. But I don't know where this comes from. So,
I believe it, but I could also give you some suggestions where it might come from.
Okay, can we do that at the end though?
Yeah, okay. So can I talk about the Black-Eyed Kids themselves? So I think like if it's one of two things. It's either vampires or aliens.
We'll get to that. I've got a list of theories at the end.
And I feel like, or it's like the early stages of a demon invasion. No, I don't know.
I just don't know.
But the thing is, it's like if you were an entity that wanted to trick someone. I'm using entity as like a broad term for we don't know what it is, not necessarily a ghost. But if you're an entity that was trying to trick someone, you take on your most vulnerable form, right? And
which is kids.
Which is kids. Because I'd find it really hard to leave a kid outside.
After doing all this research, I would not.
No, I know now.
Any child that ever comes to this house in future is going to get a big fucking nope from me.
Even the ones you know.
Even the ones I know. Even the ones I know.
But that's the thing, though, isn't it? Because if you don't know, if you're not aware of this story, you'd find generally, I think your maternal/paternal instinct, depending on who you are, kicks in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you're just like, I don't know. Like, I don't know whether I can leave it. But it's the fact that a lot of them are teenagers. And it just rings like it makes Lost Boys ring in my head really badly. Like,
yeah, and we'll talk about that at the end of the episode. But it's also what I find really interesting is that what people are describing seems to be really severe anxiety. That's what they're hit with before they even. Lots of times it's before they even open the door to these kids, before they even see them. They have this sense of anxiety, and anxiety is actually really important. Like, it's a really important innate thing that we're born with. It's like it comes from our days as cave people. I think I talked about this in a previous episode, but I also think I cut it out of that previous episode.
Yeah, I think you did.
So it comes from our days as cave people, and when we get really anxious, it's because when we were tribal, we were always on red alert in order to be able to save ourselves, to keep us alive. So, you know, you might get eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or attacked by, you know, a neighbouring tribe, whatever it was. So you're always on red alert, and anxiety is the fight or flight reflex that's glitching inside us. So when people say they suffer from anxiety, that's what's happening. Their fight or flight reflex is being triggered by nothing or seemingly nothing. So that person who described like that prickling, tingling sensation, it is anxiety. That's what it is. But I think that we have, sometimes it malfunctions, like a glitch in the Matrix, where you walk into a room and you don't know why, and it makes you really anxious, and your body is picking up on something that you don't even know what your body's picking up on. But is it possible that these kids are real, right, for example, and they're emitting something before you even see them that your body picks up on and goes, big fat fucking nope, this is not happening, you need to get out of here right now. Because that's the overriding thing, is that everyone has that sense of fear.
Could they be emitting infrasound?
Will, you've ruined this podcast.
So I also think that it's not only the... So I know some other stories about black-eyed kids, which I'm not going to say just in case it's coming. But it's the instinct that there's a kid on their own.
Yeah.
But these are the most remote areas, so that's an added thing. So it's not only there's a kid on his own, there's a kid on their own in the middle of nowhere, or kids on their own in the middle of nowhere.
Or the side of the road, or in the desert, or whatever it is.
Vulnerable situations, but I don't think they're children.
Well, we'll talk about what they are at the end. I've got a couple more stories for you. You ready?
Never.
Okay, let's do this. This is actually the last one. One more harrowing encounter reported on the site Week in Weird was allegedly experienced by a United States Marine stationed at a barracks in Texas in the United States. One quiet evening, something very strange happened indeed, of which the witness would say, "I'm a 6'7", 260-pound airman." I don't understand why men have the need to give you a description of their height and weight every time they tell you a story.
So, it is, I just want to point this out, okay, it is prevalent in male sporting in America to know your height and weight.
Yeah, but it doesn't make me think that you're any braver if you're 6'7".
No, but it's the physical, like, it's to prove that he's not going to get overpowered by...
I know what it symbolises and what it proves, and the whole point is like, I'm a big guy, so I don't scare easily. I don't need to know. It doesn't make any difference to me if you're 4'2".
I understand what you're saying, but I think it's a cultural thing. Like, if you watch any American sport, that's how they're literally described in those terms. That's how the commentators refer to, like, if they're introducing someone, the wrestling, they will get you the weight, and you can see on the screen how big they are. You don't need the weight.
Okay.
It's just a thing, isn't it? It's like a cultural thing. Like, I know what you're saying, but I think it's actually, there's a cultural element to it as well.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can I continue?
No. Yes.
I'm a 6'7", 260-pound airman who was prior Special Forces. About a month ago, while stationed at a base in Texas that I will not disclose, I was up drinking a beer when I heard a knock on my dorm door. I got out of bed thinking it was my pissmate, and since we have Jack and Jill style bathrooms connecting our rooms, I opened our bathroom door and there was nothing. Being confused as hell, I heard this sharp rapping on my door again, so I look out my peephole. Now, the hole being quite settled halfway down the door, I had to bend down to look through it. Standing there in front of me was a boy who looked about 17 or 18 at the most. I asked what's up, and he looked up with a smile that I can only describe as partially cruel and hungry looking. With a gaunt face, the boy asked me if he could use my phone. I said, "Sorry bud, I'm about to go sleep, so try the special building across the parking lot." I closed the door, thinking nothing of it. He knocked again, and I walked over to my window, this time to intimidate the boy into leaving me be. I pulled my blinds up and looked straight at him. He looked up at me. I'd say he was only about 5'9" and about 140 pounds. Real gaunt and frail looking guy. Believe me when I say I don't scare easily, but something about him made me feel uneasy as all hell. He looked up at me and asked if he could come in again, and then I saw his eyes. They were empty looking coals, and a smile crept into his mouth. That same hungry, predatory smile, and I felt goosebumps on my legs and on my back. Something wasn't right. I said, "I'm going to tell you one more time before I kick your ass to get lost." I turned around to get my phone and looked back, and he was gone. At this point, the witness said he was overcome by an intense feeling of deja vu, as if he had seen the kid somewhere before. After pondering it for a while, he realised that he had seen the same kid 2 years prior while he was with his brother. They had been working at a gas station at the time when that kid walked across a 4-lane highway to step up to the door and stand there staring at them. When they asked him what he wanted, the kid had apparently asked to use their phone and they refused. The kid had then drawn closer and the two witnesses had backed away to go into the building, feeling a sense of danger even though the kid was quite frail looking. The creepy kid, who they could see had a pale white face and pure black eyes, then stood right outside the glass door, knocking on it for about 5 minutes. Ugh! Having enough of this, the brother then picked up a baseball bat and rushed outside to confront the stranger, but the kid had disappeared. For some reason, the memory had been repressed, but his encounter at the barracks had brought it all back, and he was convinced that it was the exact same kid that his brother had successfully chased off. The black-eyed kid phenomenon has certainly generated its fair share of frightening and creepy reports over the years, and it seems as though the mythology around them has grown and evolved to the point where it's very difficult to tell where any reality ends and pure urban legend begins. It all seems like a modern-day boogeyman tale that very often smacks of myth and folklore, yet for those who say they've encountered these beings, it all seems really real. And if real, it seems that the black-eyed kids are a frightening force to be reckoned with, but a force that, as we've seen here, can be perhaps pushed back and thwarted. Whether any of these accounts are true or not, it all manages to weave more threads into the complex and spooky tapestry of the black-eyed kids legend. So I've got some theories for you.
Boom. Yeah. Ooh, yeah.
Theory number 1.
Can I just ask something about that particular story?
Yeah, you can.
The guy is an airman. Mm-hmm. He's on an airbase. Mm-hmm. He's in his barracks. He's in his dorm room. There's a boy running around the airbase. Is that not a security breach?
I would imagine so, yeah. Which is obviously why there are many questions about these stories.
Yes.
Theory number 1.
Okay.
Vampires. So as the vampire legend goes, a vampire needs to be invited into your house. They are pale, they don't age, they obviously give a sense of like difference from the average human, as in you meet them and you're like, oh, something's quite off about you. We're not going to discuss the existence of vampires in this episode because they're real. There are people in the world who firmly believe they are vampires. There are people in the world who drink blood. Therefore, they are real. Pharrell Williams, also a vampire. That's a fact. It's a well-known fact. Look it up. He hasn't aged in like 40 years. So vampires is theory number 1. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that was my initial thought. But not from vampires, from a movie.
From Lost Boys.
Yeah. See, that's what... it's very Lost Boys-y.
It is.
In my mind. And it's not... It's old enough to be like... Late 90s, it's old enough to maybe be out of social... You know, it's got a bit of a cult status, but it's not necessarily new.
Yeah.
But it's still relevant enough to be in someone's mind if they were going to pitch a fake story. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, because I've heard worse stories about black-eyed kids, but they've obviously come after the original one. So yeah. Vampires is my gut instinct, I think.
So you think it's vampires?
Well, I'm torn, but vampires was my first initial, and every time I've read about black-eyed kids, I've always felt there's something very vampire-y about them.
Okay. Theory number 2. Aliens.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who believe that these children are actually aliens because of their really pale skin and their big black eyes, like alien greys.
It reminds me of, which you're not going to get this reference, but I'm going to tell because there will be people that listen to this that have seen it. It reminds me very much of the arrival of the Skrulls to Earth in Captain Marvel. It's that kind of, they take on the form of the first thing they see.
Okay.
Which they're aliens.
Right, I gotcha.
Yeah, so... It's that kind of thing, and it would make sense if they were preying on us.
So there's people who believe that they're aliens or that they're alien-human hybrids. So lots of alien abduction encounters include people seeing or, you know, having kind of their sexual organs or their genitalia tampered with on that on the alien spaceship, and then they're anal probing, and then. They often report seeing children who are alien-human hybrid. And there's people who believe that kind of, for whatever reason, these people or these black-eyed children are trying to emanate the etiquette of humanity. So they're doing the whole... Brohaya do a really good episode about this. I think it's like their 3rd episode or something. So it might be worthwhile listening to their episode on black-eyed kids as well. But they do the whole kind of, can you please let me in? And if somebody says no, then... What do you do? Ask again. You know what I mean? Be persistent. Continue to ask until somebody lets you in. So that's kind of aliens and hybrids were my other theory.
I don't like that last bit.
You see, I don't get it. I don't get. It's just stupid.
I mean, like if they were trying to blend in, then yeah, obviously etiquette comes into it. But they don't seem like they want to blend in. Yeah,
they don't seem like they want to blend in. And also, if aliens have the like technological capacity to be shooting all over the universe and then sucking people up into their spaceship, anal probing them and throwing them back down to the earth and all that stuff, and sucking eyeballs out of people's heads and sucking brains out of cows and whatever else aliens do, I think they'd be able to understand the etiquette of humanity. Or they could just break into people's houses.
Okay, so what if they are animal? What if they are human-alien hybrids?
Yeah.
But they haven't come from the aliens? What if they are the leftovers of experimentation from Area 51 that have escaped? So actually it's humans trying to crossbreed from alien parts and human parts to see what happens, and they've actually escaped and they're roaming the desert.
But there's reports of them all over the world. Apparently. I'm saying apparently for that one. Number 4. Okay. Demons.
I want to hear about this because I've got a sort of demon-based theory.
So there's a theory that because these children have black eyes, because they're obviously slightly otherworldly looking, that they're actually demons in disguise, because there's some reports of them being accompanied by a really sulfuric smell. Someone needs to sort out their diet.
Yeah, eggy farts.
Eggy farts, that's all that is. So there's some people who believe that they're demonic. I mean, I don't have any truck with that. And if it was a demon, why are you coming knocking on somebody's door to make them feel uneasy?
So what if loads of portals have been opened and these are just something that came through the portal?
Yeah, but surely there'd be a more tangible viewing of them, or there'd be something more tangible that we could work with rather than these stories that are peppering the internet.
Yeah, I don't actually think they are demons. I think they're vampires.
Okay, can we continue with our theories? Yeah. I don't think they're demons either. I think that's shite. Yeah. Theory number 5, they're a government experiment. Often there was one of the stories that again is Amber, Ohio, is about a girl who lets them into her house, and all of this mad stuff happens when she lets them into the house, and they keep saying our parents are coming, our parents are coming, our parents are coming, and then eventually they just say our parents are here, and they leave the house, and their parents is a car that pulls up outside and MIBs get out. So Men in Black is a real American thing.
Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones?
No, definitely not.
Oh my God.
And Men in Black is a real American thing. I think it's like a cultural American thing, right? Because we don't really have that sort of thing in the UK. It's the CIA, basically, but it's not the CIA. They're slightly different. Yeah. So Men in Black are like people who are incredibly tall, incredibly pale, slightly off, like obviously in black suits, black sunglasses, but that there's something kind of otherworldly about them as well.
Like the dude from The Matrix?
No.
No.
Think about it as being a black-eyed kid, but an adult. A black-eyed adult.
Okay.
So we'd have to do a whole other episode on Men in Black.
On black-eyed adults.
I cannot get into it because it's going to make me have a breakdown. And my last theory, which is the one that
we haven't really discussed that theory, but
you don't know what they are.
Yeah, that's true.
So you can't discuss it if you don't know what they are.
No, I thought you said you started by saying government experiment. I thought that was
government experiment. Sorry, go on. That is a theory.
It could be. That's what I said originally.
I just don't know to what end. Do you know what I mean? What is the point if it's a government experiment?
So, it's always super soldiers.
But super soldiers to go knocking on your door? Or
No. The original, I think they're probably a failed experiment. So, it was something, I don't actually, I think they're vampires, but let's just go on this theory for a second. They were a failed experiment, so they were looking at how to reproduce or how to put alien DNA into human embryos in the hope that actually it would create a super soldier, Captain America kind of thing. But actually it just didn't work, and actually what you made is real hungry humans that needed to feed constantly, and then they escaped.
That does not make any sense.
Why not?
Because why don't they just walk into your house then? How is it that they've been created with this inability to shirk human manners?
That's because they're vampires, but I'm just trying to take your theory a little bit. I'm trying to talk about it a little bit.
My last one is that if these accounts have happened, it's just kids being kids.
No, don't believe that.
So this kind of has taken over the internet a little bit. Black-eyed kids, there's been news reports, blah, 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 books written about it. About it. The whole lot. Oh, imagine if you were like a bored teenager, get yourself some black contact lenses and off you go and absolutely wreak havoc. And you could, easily, because you're not actually doing any harm. You are not doing anything that is legally going to get you in trouble. All you're doing is making people feel unsettled. And that's the one that I want to settle on, is that I believe this has grown legs and it's just kids being kids.
So what was the original story about them?
I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know.
Yeah, you got a big hole there, haven't you?
Yeah, big hole in my logic.
There could be, some of them could be. I'll give you that. Some of them. I think there's always an element to these spooky things that occasionally they're not all spooky. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, obviously, yeah.
So, there probably are some teenagers that are doing that. I tend to think, though, that if it was like all teenagers, there would be some instance of police picking them up.
Probably, yeah.
Because bored teenagers are bored, but they also probably don't have the impetus to then go like
But at
miles
what
away
point
from their own
then,
home.
if the police picked this kid up with black eyes, blah, 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 that police officer is not going to then go on the news and say, oh my God, everybody, black-eyed kids aren't real. I've just picked up these teenagers. They just move on with their life.
But you'd hear a report, so there'd be a local news report saying, oh, we picked up some...
I don't think so. I completely disagree with that. I think everyone would just get on with their lives.
No, I think it would filter out. You would hear it. If there was enough of them, if enough of it was fake, they would start filtering back into it, I think. You'd hear the odds. You'd be able to search it. You'd be able to Google it.
I don't know. So you're settling on vampires?
Yeah. I really liked my government experiment fail thing, but then it doesn't
None of it doesn't make any sense.
No, it did up until the point where you said they couldn't
No, but what is the end game? If these entities are real, right, what is the point? They're not doing anything.
Feeding.
Feeding on what?
On the people that let them in.
The only thing I can give you with that is that if there are people that let them in, if it's a real thing, if there's people that let them in, blah, 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 maybe they die, or maybe whatever, something happens to them and people don't realise it's because of black-eyed kids. That's the only thing I can give you.
Yeah,
This is blowing my mind.
But we did an episode on missing people. We know how many hundreds of thousands of people are unaccounted for in the States. What if some of them are actually people that have let kids in? Or have met their end by the kids?
I can't deal with this episode.
Why not?
Because I'm going to have a breakdown.
Why?
Because I can't decide. I can't find a logical explanation for
I've
this.
just explained it to you. It's vampires. The silence.
I can't even argue with you anymore. This podcast has broken me.
Why?
Because I just don't. I don't know where this. I just don't know. Right. So I'm going to leave it there because I want to say to people, if you've got a theory about this, if you can find something that can tell me this isn't real, or you can find something that tells me it is real, or you have had an experience with a black-eyed kid or something, you know somebody who has, then send it our way, because I am fascinated by this.
I think there's more. I think Lost Boys has got more to do with this than the people who've made the connection.
There's also the theory that people are just really the power of not power of persuasion, what's the word I'm looking for? When you like drop something into somebody's psyche.
I don't know.
When you see things like Lost Boys and whatever, and then something happens and you attribute Lost Boys to it.
I know there's a term because you've used it before, but I don't know what it is.
I don't know what it is. Power of persuasion? No, that's not it. I don't know, but either way, it might be that things like Lost Boys are in our psyche. And now that black-eyed kids are somewhere in people's psyche, if they have any sort of strange experience with a child, they're like, oh my God, it's a black-eyed kid. I watched a Shane Dawson video the other day where he talks about his experience with a black-eyed kid that he had never told anybody because he didn't think it was anything to be afraid of. And then he was like, oh, that really unsettling thing that happened potentially was a black-eyed kid. I know. Watch it. Shane Dawson, black-eyed kids. Watch it. So, we've got new reviews this week.
Hey.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
The first review comes from Lesbian Beyonce.
Ooh.
And it's entitled Absolutely Dantastic.
Hey.
I couldn't think of a pun for Emma's name, but they're both awesome hosts.
Hey.
The podcast is truly wonderful and incredibly professional, which must be down to Tiny Bims, who presumably is in charge of everything that happens off air. This podcast has provided me with hours of driving entertainment, except when I'm driving in the dark. I believe that is Cass or Heidi from episode 5.
I would say that is as well.
Thank you, Cass or Heidi. Our second review comes from Chaz82, but it's CH82AZ. See what I did there? And it's called Sleeping with the Light On. Stumbled across this podcast, can't remember where from. Frankly, don't care. I binged all the available episodes in a weekend, which included having to pause and watch cat videos on Instagram because I'd get too freaked out. Love the presenters. I want to be their friend. You can absolutely be our friend. And
we can be Emma's friend because I'm not very good at stuff like social media.
Yeah,
but
that's
I'll be
not
your
very
friend if I
social in
can work
general.
out how it works.
And it's nice to have them in my flat, even if some of it is freaking terrifying. Oh, and I love the film reviews too, mainly because I hate when things are all highbrow and worthy and these guys are just honest. Again, I want them to be my friends. I reckon they'd be great value for a drink. I don't really drink, so I'm actually really good value.
Is this review from a black-eyed child?
And they're like, hi,
I wanna
we
be a
want to
friend.
come to your house.
Can I be a friend?
I'm going to give
No.
you one
Can I
more
be a
review.
friend? No. Can I be a friend? No.
No, sorry. I'm going to give you one more review. And this is from Goat Peter, who I
Okay.
believe is greatest of all time.
Ah.
Peter. And this review is entitled Nice But Annoying. Nice, but the sudden loud voices of the presenters when they get excited is really, really annoying and painful on headphones. I just want to say to Peter, that's not going to change, but I'm really sorry. that I've hurt your
I'm
eardrums.
sorry as well. I would also suggest looking on your phone at the volume gauge, and if it's in red, it's probably too loud anyway, so maybe just not.
There's that, and also I'm not very good at editing, so I don't know, and I can't be arsed to edit things in that detail. So Peter, I know you gave us 3 stars, but maybe it's not worth your time, because I'm not going to get any quieter. I am this loud all the time. I'm actually a lot quieter on the podcast than I am in real life.
That's true. I can vouch for that.
You just be thankful, Peter, that I don't live in the same house as you, or you would have no eardrums left.
Thank you for leaving us a review anyway, and saying some nice things about us, just being a bit noisy.
If you want more Black Eyed Kids stories...
Oh, I thought you were offering them Black Eyed Kids. I was like, hang on a second.
If you guys want some Black Eyed Kids, because we're secretly trafficking paranormal children, if you guys want to hear some more Black Eyed Kids stories, then you can subscribe to our Patreon, because this week's Patreon episode is going to be more Black Eyed Kid encounters. There was just too much for one episode. If you want to do that, it is $4 a... No, how much is it? $5?
Yeah, I just
Can't
made up a new tier there.
$5 a month for extra episodes weekly, and $2 a month if you want to listen to the wonderful 50p movie club that is Dan and Will doing what they do best, which is watching films and taking the piss out of them.
Yeah.
And if you want to send us your story, you can do that at reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. We are always accepting listener submissions, so please send your stories to us. I've gotten loads this week that are really good. And if you want to follow us on Instagram, we are on Instagram at Real Life Ghost Stories. We are on Twitter
at Real Ghost Pod,
and we are on Facebook. We have a Facebook page called Real Life Ghost Stories Podcast. Give it a like, and a super secret Facebook group called RLGS Supergroup, where you can share loads of memes and have fun and talk to other fans of the show. And also, big news, big exciting news.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dan has joined Instagram this week.
Yes.
As 50p Movie Club.
Yeah, I really apologise for sending pictures of the football yesterday. It was not really appropriate for our audience, but I won't do that again. But the underground one went down well. So,
I mean, he will do that again, but listen, that's just the way it is.
It's 50p, 50p Movie Club, I think.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, but if you can't find it, just look on the Real Life Ghost Stories one. I'm sure I've been tagged in at some point.
But also, if you have any Black Eyed Kids stories, do send them our way.
If you have any Black Eyed Kids, send them our way.
Send them our way so we can exterminate them quickly and efficiently for you. And
that involves me taking the kid to the top of the stairs and Emma drop kicking it back down.
And on that note, we shall see you next week.
Adios.